Two Animal Crossing villagers with the same personality type still aren't completely the same. Why? Matter of fact, two identical villagers from different towns but are the same exact villager also still aren't completely the same. It's kind of wild, and to this day, it's still a mystery to what extent this difference goes. But I want to take a deeper look at this unknown variable. Let's back up a little first. Most of us know that in Animal Crossing nowadays, there are 8 different personality types, which means no matter which combination of 10 villagers you have on your island, for example, you may have noticed at some point or another that at least 2 of your villagers, sometimes more, might have the same exact personality type, but they still feel different, right? Now, there's a lot of information out there on the personalities of Animal Crossing villagers, but a lot of the guides out there water down the real explanation to just a brief rundown of, hey, there's 8 personalities, get with it. But it goes way, way deeper than just 8 different personality types repeating the same dialogue over and over again across the board. There's a lot of nuances and a lot of different variables at play that make each character completely unique. Now, as we know, there are the 8 personality types that are evenly split across male and female villagers, with male villagers potentially having either the jock personality type, the cranky personality type, or the lazy personality type in the first 3 Animal Crossing games, and in New Leaf and Animal Crossing New Horizons, they added in the smug personality type. And then for female villagers, we have the snooty personality type, the normal personality type, and the peppy personality type, and then the sisterly personality type was added as well. And in all of Animal Crossing, there's been a total of 460 different Animal Crossing villagers, with 413 of them being in Animal Crossing New Horizons, which when you think about it, those being distributed amongst just 8 personality types doesn't really seem all that diverse. What makes these characters stand out from one and another? Well, fortunately enough, Nintendo thought about this in a pretty creative way. The Animal Crossing games definitely weigh into your interactions with each villager, with a lot of your interactions in quests being slightly weighed down by essentially what you have to do to progress in the game. For example, in Animal Crossing New Horizons, your first 2 villagers are actually predetermined based on what personality type they have initially. When you start up your island, you'll always have 1 jock personality type villager and 1 sisterly type personality villager. Then the following villagers you get will always fall from a fixed pool of either a normal, peppy, and lazy personality next. Now, of course, Animal Crossing did a great job at not backing each personality type into a corner. They didn't be like, oh, all the dog villagers, they're going to be the lazy type villager, and so on and so forth. They varied those, fortunately, which does keep things feeling more diverse, but the dialogue goes a bit deeper. And the roles of these 8 personality types actually are kind of important, even if we don't think about them normally. For instance, cooking and crafting are an interesting mechanic influenced by personality type. Now, there's a whole system in place for cooking and crafting where if you go into one of your villagers' houses, they'll be crafting something and you can get a DIY recipe. And this actually shifts throughout the day. But typically when you're playing, there's usually 1 villager out there crafting or cooking away, and they kind of have that in a cycle where at any given time, you can usually find someone doing that. And interestingly enough, what type of DIY recipe you can receive from one of these villagers that are crafting away can be determined by what type of personality each villager has, which does keep things pretty varied. Now, personality types do play a bigger role in the rest of Animal Crossing. Besides just the way that their dialogue comes across, there are other aspects to them as well determined by their personality, like their awake and asleep times. This is done so in a way where usually whatever time you're awake and playing Animal Crossing, someone in your town should be awake. I think there is a rollback feature where if no one should be awake, one of your villagers will be awake anyways, and they might mention how they couldn't sleep or anything, which is pretty interesting for sure. But now things get really interesting when we take those personality types, those 8, and subdivide them into smaller, nuanced traits that make them different from one another. What's interesting is that even when you have 2 of the same types of personalities in your town, there's extra variables to keep them different from one another, even if they are mostly similar. Now, there's obvious ones that we've all have seen firsthand, like catchphrases, those little weird things that they say. They're different from one another, but they don't really do too much. They also have a favorite quote that they sometimes say. It's not really relevant, but the more nuanced stuff is what I think is where all the juicy, interesting stuff comes from. Things that normal Animal Crossing fans really don't care about, but then us weird people who are really obsessed with the ins and outs of Animal Crossing pay a lot of attention to, and then when we're playing, we're like, oh look, this thing, and then you try to explain to someone who, I don't know, doesn't even know how to plant a money tree in Animal Crossing, and they don't care about things like voice sequencing that we're about to talk about, but here we are. Let's talk about voice sequencing. Now, in the older games, it was just the cranky villagers that had a unique unique pitch to their voice. But by Animal Crossing New Leaf, each personality type had their own different pitch for their voice. But in Animal Crossing New Horizons, they took it a step further and refit the voice synthesizing, which is like the little, I don't know what that was. They took the program that does that, and fortunately not Rocket Elijah dubbing all of the Animal Crossing voices. They use a digital synthesizer to take the text and translate it into the sounds that we hear when the villagers are talking. And now there are even more nuanced things depending on what species of villager it is alongside their personality type, which then changes the whole game up, where if you have two villagers that are the same personality type but are different species, their voices will be slightly different, either a slight pitch change or maybe a slight difference in how the pacing comes across, which does add a uniqueness between two different personality types. Now check this out. If you look at like Wikipedia, they have a good write-up on this, but Dora is a mouse villager, Chevra is a goat villager, and Margie is an elephant villager, and they all are normal personality types. However, their pitches in their voices are all different, with Dora having the higher voice and Margie having the lowest voice. Pretty interesting stuff, right? But then there's other little nuanced things that make two villagers of the same personality type even more different. Like, for instance, their favorite things. Each villager has their own favorite KK Slider song, which is different from one another. Of course, each villager has their own birthday, which, mind you, every potential birthday is covered technically, with the exception of Leap Day, which happens every 4 years, where instead of a villager necessarily having that day, Luna, the NPC, has the birthday on that day. So if you looked up your birthday, you can find who your Animal Crossing twin is. My birthday falls on December 25th, which usually means, like, I don't know, my birthday gets forgotten. But Animal Crossing didn't forget. Ruby shares my birthday. Look at that. How cool. And then, of course, every Animal Crossing villager, despite personality types being the same, do have different style houses as well and different decor, which everyone kind of already knew about that. But then there's deeper mechanics that are lesser known about, like the form of Animal Crossing villager hobbies. Check this out. We're talking about two villagers that fall on both sides of the Animal Crossing spectrum. There's Raymond, who was loved so much he was hated, and then there was Rodney, who was hated so much, I don't know, people just didn't like Rodney. Both are smug villagers, but Rodney's hobby is the music hobby, but Raymond has the nature hobby. What this means is if you have Rodney living in your island, you might see him singing or dancing or whatever a little more frequently than you would see Raymond, but you might see Raymond like with a book or looking at like a bug or something more often than you would see Rodney do it. And while certain personality types are more likely to have a certain hobby than another, they're still different across the board, meaning that it's a fair game as to what hobby there can be. Now, there are a small selection of 6 different potential hobbies that every villager can have. There's a fashion hobby. It's when you see like a villager who's holding like a pink bag or something, or they have like a certain accessory. Now, those typically fall under snooty or peppy personalities, but randomly Sasha, the male smug villager, has this hobby. So it doesn't necessarily have to be married to the personality type. There are exceptions that are made there. Fitness is another interesting one. We've seen jock villagers do this a lot. They'll be like lifting dumbbells or something. Every gorilla has this hobby as well, with one exception, Rilla, who has the nature hobby. So they've thrown it around a little bit. Music one we talked about a little bit. Typically this falls under smug, sisterly, or cranky villagers. There's the education hobby, where they like look at artwork or, I don't know, stuff with a magnifying glass. Sometimes they have those like rimmed glasses. Those fall under cranky or normal villagers typically. And then there's the play hobby, which is villagers who like run around and do the Naruto running thing. Lazy, jock, sisterly, or peppy villagers can have this hobby type. Now these are the basic ones that I think most of us have observed firsthand, but there is a secret mechanic Nintendo programmed, which are called personality subtypes. And this will just like blow your mind how any of this works, because it goes so much deeper than just the 8 personality types, because there's now sub-personality types, which were really vaguely known about kind of for a while, but then eventually people looked into the code and they got a deeper understanding. And as it turns out, every single villager personality, those 8 different personalities, have different variations in the form of an A-type or a B-type personality, branching each personality into 2 sub-personalities, which then makes it even more likely that 2 villagers with the same personality are going to be slightly different. Like I said a second ago, early on in the Animal Crossing companion guide, it said that there was 8 different personality types, each with 2 subtypes. And that's all we knew. Nobody knew what that meant, and it was confusing, but it was confirmation that there were subtypes, which did cause people to want to dig into it. There's this interesting post that was shared onto Haystack, and it looks like they were able to figure out the main times and the way that the game's algorithm like decides some of the variables as to what splits these personality types. And it seems like most of these things are tied to different dialogue, mostly stories that villagers will tell you, and those split off. So whenever you have a villager like retelling you a story of something that happened, know that there's an alternate villager out there that would tell you a different story if the circumstances were the same. It also appears that most of these these stories that do split between the A and B type personalities are only discussed if you have a high friendship with the villager, which is a whole nother mechanic that we will briefly touch on in a little bit. Now, when it comes to the sub-personality type, those A and B types we were talking about, it seems like there are some correlations between their hobby, but it's not always the same. Like, for instance, out of all of the normal personality villagers that have the A-type subtype, 20 of them have the nature hobby, and only one of them doesn't have the nature hobby. But sometimes it's not always the same. Like peppy villagers that are in the A subtype, only 9 of them have the play hobby, and 3 of them don't. Snooty A has the education hobby for 9 of them, but the other 8 don't. Then there's other little nuanced things for their sub-personality type. The way that they wave at the player, if you're like running by and they see you and they wave at you, that's actually determined based on what their sub-personality type is. So if they are cranky A, they'll do a normal wave, but if they're cranky B, they'll do a low wave. I didn't want to have to look for footage of all this, so I did this Photoshop thing. But just know that the villagers wave differently based on what sub-personality type that they have. So if you're ever curious, I'm going to try to remember to put the link to the Haystack doc in the description, and it has a list of all of the subtypes for each villager, so you can look up your villagers and see what their subtype personalities are. And that way, if you're trying to get full diversity across your island, and you have to have 2 duplicate personality types because there's only 8 personality types for 10 villagers, you can double check and make sure at least, you know, if you're going to double up on, say, a peppy villager, you can do one from the peppy B category and one from the peppy A category, and they'll be slightly different. But now I want to dig into the third deepest layer here, and that's when you have 2 villagers that are the same villager, which you can't technically do, but if you've had a villager on your island and you go visit your friend's island and they have the same villager, are these the same exact villager, or are they slightly different? Are there nuanced things between them? If you have a villager move away, but then later the same villager moves back in, is it the same villager as before? It's a little bit harder to figure out, and still a lot of this is a mystery, but there are evidence and clues that we can go off of to try to figure things out. Now, in the past on this channel, we've talked about birthdays and gifts, and every villager, despite their personality type, have different gift preferences. And there's actually a calculator that's been made on Nook Plaza that will tell you exactly what gifts lean in favor for each villager. Audie and Flora both are peppy villagers that have the same sub-personality type. They're both B sub-personalities. But when gifts are concerned, Audie really appreciates green, white, cute, or active gifts. And that's a whole other thing to dive into as to what items fall into which category. Flora, on the other hand, likes colorful pink, cute, and active gifts. A lot of similar likes, but still a difference in the colors. Flora could have colorful, and Audie can like green. That's just like an extra layer there. So while these are still married to each individual villager, we could take it a step further and find other things like the reaction directly to getting a gift that they like that does start to make 2 villagers, even if they're the same, different. For example, if you gift Flora a ton of gifts that she likes, and your friend also has Flora and never gifts her anything, your Flora will react differently than their Flora, as your Flora will have a higher friendship level. In the past, we've talked about this great guide made by Crossing, which goes in depth on the friendship mechanic of Animal Crossing New Horizons. It's a good read. I'll try to remember to link it in the description. Someone in the comments yell at me if I've forgotten to link the things we've talked about. But the long story short is that there are different levels of friendship you can have with your villager. And based on what level you've gotten your villager up to on how you've interacted with them, they will interact with you differently. At level 1, they can give you gifts. At level 2, you can give them gifts. At level 3, they might give you a nickname or try to sell items to you. Level 4, you can change their catchphrase, which makes them even more unique. Level 5, you can change up their greeting. You have a chance of even getting their photo, which is like a big deal for some collectors. There's people out there trying to get every single photo of every villager legitimately without like trading or anything. And that's like a whole other crazy thing to try to do. At max level, they might even try to buy your own stuff. And then to increase your points and get these extra different things, including those extra dialogue lines of them telling stories and stuff, which really do make the villagers seem more in depth. I know a lot of people complain that New Horizons has villagers feel kind of shallow, but I feel like the juicy dialogue is hidden behind the higher friendship levels. But I don't know, talking to them, selling stuff to them, or catching fleas off of them, or giving them gifts on a regular basis, those all increase your points. An easy thing to try is just giving them furniture that seems to really respond well, and if you wrap it, you get a bonus point, so put it in gift wrap too. Nonetheless, there is a difference between the friendship levels, and that does have an outcome directly on how villagers interact. Now, I have a theory, and it's just a theory because there isn't a lot of documentation online, and it's just speculative at this point, and I'd love for someone to dig in and figure this one out, but there might be another variable that dictates different Animal Crossing villager personalities, even if they're the the same exact villager, or at least another variable that makes him more different than one with the same personality and same villager. And that falls under the category of goals, which is a unique thing that is only occasionally referenced. It could also fall under skills. I think skills and goals go hand in hand here, but they are a dialogue-based statement that villagers will occasionally say where they talk about things in the future and their hopes and dreams and whatever. And there's a large pool of possible skills and goals that they can say. However, there isn't enough documentation out there that confirm that these are married specifically for each villager. I've seen people posting about how their Raymond wants to be a rapper, but then there's players, myself included, who had Raymond on their island for a long time, never heard anything about these rap dreams, and my wife has Raymond on her island and she still hasn't heard anything about goals of being a rapper. If anything, I think we've heard Raymond talk about other types of goals that he's had. I just can't remember them exactly. So there is the chance that there is an extra variable that make two Animal Crossing villagers different even more so, but it's hard to say. I did try to dig into this and I couldn't find anything. So if you have any experiences remembering what your Animal Crossing villagers' hopes and dreams are, maybe document them in the comments here. If someone has one, they can share it with someone else and maybe we can get to the bottom of this if they're the same or not. But here's the thing. If you had a villager move in early into your town or island and then you later went to someone else's town and you saw them in boxes and you got them to move back, it's not the same villager. It's a different version of the same villager. Unless he moved directly to the other town and then moved directly back to your town, it's really not the same. And even then, there's differences to how his house would look. So if you have a villager early on, as you remember in Animal Crossing New Horizons, you have to craft furniture that then go into their house. And that is what their house will look like unless you redesign it later on when they did the whole update that let you do that. But that makes things interesting because if a villager moves into your island later on, they bring their own furniture with them. So there's now two variations of every house depending on if the Animal Crossing villager was early enough to have their furniture crafted by the player or if they came later where they brought their own furniture. So that makes another level of uniqueness between two villagers that potentially could be exactly the same. You had a villager that had their crafted furniture from you in your island and then they moved away and then you got that villager to move back. Their house would be the newer house, making them even more different than the original version. But yeah, backing up to the whole skill and goal thing, on the Animal Crossing wiki, there is some documentation, but it doesn't seem to be really consistent across the board. So I don't know. Tell me what you guys think.
Overall, I do think the idea of skills and goals are really interesting. I hope it gets elaborated on in the future, but I do want to know more about it. Like, I wish there was sources or examples or something we could go off of. Like Cherry having the skill of waking up early. Is that just dialogue? Does she ever actually wake up early? What does that mean? Also, there were a couple of other things that I was unsure about that I saw on the Animal Crossing wiki, like fears. Like Cherry's scared of a ghost mask. Does that mean if you wear a ghost mask and you walk up to Cherry, she'll be scared? Or is this something dialogue based? Like, you see where it's confusing when this stuff is documented, but there's zero explanation out there. This is something I think that us as an Animal Crossing fan base should maybe try to get to the bottom of because it's interesting. Also, there's siblings as a thing, like Cherry being the second of 5 siblings, okay. And then if you look at another villager like Eugene, he doesn't have like a fear or siblings listed on the same website. I actually glanced over a few other villagers and a lot of them don't have any fears listed. I did find one other villager with a fear listed in the form of Diva, who is also a sisterly villager like Cherry and has the same fear of a ghost mask. So what's going on here? Whatever it is, I don't think fear is like hard baked into like the code of the game. It might just be a dialogue thing, like a little trait or something, but yeah, it's a confusing one for sure. But then recently I had a little breakthrough with this mystery that I didn't expect to have, to the point where I had to delay the video a day so I could record this extra stuff about it because this breakthrough literally just happened yesterday. But I was playing on a video in Animal Crossing New Leaf and I got to Halloween. And as I was handing out candy, some of the villagers were mentioning other villagers who were potentially scared of a ghost mask, which then made me think of this part, which, is this just like a Halloween minigame mechanic? That's what I'm starting to think. And it's only related to the ghost mask, not the other masks maybe. But then at the same time, it could be something different. But I'm starting to think that perhaps it's just something tied to Halloween specifically, and maybe 1 or 2 villagers randomly have that trait. But at the same time, I don't know why like these wikis would list that as a special trait for some of the villagers if it's only related to one thing and not actually hard baked into the game. But who knows? On some of these wikis, anyone can edit stuff, so it's one of those up in the air things.
There are other nuanced things that divide different Animal Crossing villagers that have the same personality type that we really didn't go too far into that are somewhat interesting. Like in Animal Crossing New Leaf, a lot of villagers had different coffee blends, even if they had the same personality type. That's kind of cool. Unfortunately, they got rid of that in New Horizons, so we don't get to work at the coffee shop. Something I never really got to experience. Maybe in the 365 Days of Animal Crossing New Leaf video, whenever that finally gets done. I'm working on it, I'm sorry. There's even more layers when we start to look into like the whole happy home designer aspect of things, or happy home paradise, because then there's different requests that different villagers can have based on their personality type, but then there's sub-personality types put into consideration, and all of their requests are different. So that's like a whole nother rabbit hole. But as you can see, my point is proven here that there is some depth going on here. Now, I do think Nintendo's done a great job at differentiating a lot of villagers into making them all feel unique, though there's still obviously room to take things deeper in a future title. I think adding 2 more personality types is probably the next big move. I think we're due for at least being able to have 10 personalities on an island if we have 10 villagers. I think they can go a little bit further in assigning a unique trait for sure. Whether we know for sure about the skills and goals things or not, I think if it's not the case that these are unique, they could do something like this that I really think would diversify villagers across the board, even identical villagers. With how much we travel now and see our friends' islands, why not take things a step further? I don't think we're going to see much in the 3.0 update, but who knows? Maybe we'd be surprised. I feel like they would have told us by now if they're adding a new personality type. I don't think it's happening in New Horizons. But hey, well, at least we're getting something in New Horizons. I didn't talk about the big 3.0 update in a video, so this is it. I think it looks neat. That's my takeaway. I think the whole like creative mode thing that they're adding is a big one. We'll be playing with that in the future. Maybe after I get the 365 Days of New Leaf done. I'm hoping we'll get it done soon. Maybe by the end of the year, maybe early January. It's coming along. If you enjoyed this video, you want to see more Rocket Elijah, make sure you are subscribed, comment, like. All of that helps feed the algorithm and sends it to more people. So if you're watching on TV, just subscribing and hitting the like button goes a really long way, longer than you think. And then also if you're on phone, that helps too. Okay, that's it. Watch this video that YouTube thinks you'll like. Okay, bye.